Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Tarot Memoirs. Today we're going to be talking about the eights. If you're new to Tarot Memoirs, this is a series that I have been running on my channel for a while, like a long while, and I'm cruising my way through all of the tarot cards in the deck, and we're talking about sort of some general meanings, which I am using Untold Tarot by Caitlin Matthews for Marseille meanings, and Kitchen Table Tarot by Melissa Sanova for Rider-Waite-Smith meanings for the current chunk of minor arcana I'm on. But I have used different books at different parts of the series, so you definitely want to check it out to get different perspectives. Although Kitchen Table Tarot has come with me the whole way through. I am also sharing with you some pictures of decks from my collection so we can look at different perspectives on the cards, and I share some personal experiences, memoirs as I like to say, of my experience with the energies of these cards in both small ways and in bigger ways. So I like to share like a really memorable time in my life or an event that I think relates to that card, and also the small ways it shows up kind of day to day. And this is really great because it gives me something I can look back on how I perceive the cards, and because the meanings and the perceptions of the cards definitely change and shift over time. But it also, I think, is a really great diary of sort of all the things in my life I can attribute to each individual card. And there may be some doubling up. I think I've managed to not, but who knows? So with that said, I'm going to jump right in. We're going to be looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial for my classic Rider-Waite-Smith images as we go through the books. And then we're going to be looking at the Mythical Creatures Marseille deck. Well, it's a numerological pip deck for the Marseille minors. And with that said, I'm gonna jump in. I do have some tea because I am batch filming and my voice is getting a little tired, but I'm still having fun, so I'm still filming. Just how I do it. All right, so Kitchen Table Tarot, we're gonna jump into the eights. And what's nice about Kitchen Table Tarot is that she does have, and she being Melissa Sanova, does have at the introduction to each grouping of minors, so each number, she has a little overview of what she feels that number sort of symbolizes. Now to her, she has eights as hope. And here's a little blurb from what she has to say about the eights. She says, while the pentacles and wands are in the midst of hope and determination, the other two suits, so that would be the swords and the cups, are occurring in the moment before the hope kicks in. There is still confusion, still unsurety or uncertainty, but the person is this close to getting that spark of hope. So we're going to start with the Eight of Wands. So Eight of Wands, and here's what she describes about the Eight of Wands. She says, the Eight of Wands catches that moment of release that feels like spring to me. So that's really, really interesting. And she talks a little bit about growth and about throwing seeds up into the air and knowing that some will catch and some will fail and some will grow. Not achieving your goals, but starting them. So being brave and tossing your seeds in the air. Some of them will fail. This is true. Sometimes you will start and become frustrated and disheartened. But if you don't give up, you'll grow. And this is a really interesting take on the Eight of Wands. For me, I often see this as a lot of momentum, but the kind of momentum that can feel almost overwhelming, like it's taken on a life of its own. If you've ever written a book or a story or painted a picture, there's a time in the creative process, at least, where I feel like there's enough momentum that it's almost like you don't feel like you can control where it's going to go. It's just going to go where it's going to go, and it is going to be what it's going to be. And I think the Eight of Wands has a lot of that energy to it. Melissa Sanova says, reversed, this card comes up when you run into significant obstacles on the way to a goal. So when that momentum is stalled out, it's not happening. You've reached that point of it's not going to happen. So that's what she has to say about that card. When we look at the Eight of Swords, she says, here's our Eight of Swords. oh my goodness, I'm throwing the book around. Now I've lost my page. Oh no. There it is. Okay. So typically we see somebody sort of bound up and surrounded by swords. So this card is about being trapped by your own anxiety and allowing anxiety to deal with your life. And I do agree with that. The anxiety she feels in this bleak landscape is stronger than any chain that could hold her, and only she can let the anxiety go. So she could let herself free, but she chooses not to because she's so paralyzed by what's happening around her. In a reverse position or in a shadow, she says she's talking about release. Now, my perspective on the Eight of Swords in the Rider-Waite-Smith very much is about analysis paralysis, of being so caught up in your own overthinking of a situation that you're not moving forward. You're not making a decision. You're overbound by too much thinking, right? And numerologically, which I guess I'll get into more, it's fine. I'm just going to talk about numerologically for a moment, but 8s for me are about double stability. So we have 4 stability and 4 stability. That's a lot of stability and can be a rut. It can be a way where you feel stuck, weighed down, a little trapped, a little heavy. And so that 8 is an opportunity to, are you good with this extra stability in this place that you're at, or do you need to make a shift, right? And she needs to get out of this analysis paralysis and get into some kind of movement. My perspective. 8 of Cups. Now, Melissa Sonova and I disagree on this card. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm going to share with you her perspective. And it's not that it's not valid. I think it's extremely valid. It's just I have strong feelings about the 8 of Cups that I will share with you. So, 8 of Cups. So she calls this card the hangover card, but she says it's about overdoing it. You've somehow walked away from the important truths in your life and have to shake your head to knock the cobwebs out. And then reverse, she says, what if you have the desire to escape, but nothing specific to attach to? Drifting. Your life becomes meh. Now, I see the 8 of Cups, again, if I look at it from this place of double 4 or double stability, then the 8 for me is about recognizing that this thing, this relationship, or this, because it's emotion, it's cups, it's like, what have you been pouring your emotional energy into? And you've been pouring it in so much that you've gotten yourself into a routine of certain patterns of behavior, certain patterns of relating, whether to one specific person, to everybody in your life, but you've gotten yourself stuck in a pattern. And at a certain point, you've looked at that pattern and been like, you know what? I don't care how much emotional energy I have invested in this thing, this relationship, this person, this project. It is time for me to recognize that it is complete, it's served its purpose, and I need to shake things up. I need to do something different. I need to move away from that rut. Now, maybe that's not always the case. Maybe sometimes we are sort of running away from or removing ourselves from something, from some deeper truth. Maybe we're avoiding. I could see avoidance energy in this image, certainly. But in my life, this energy has tended to play out very differently. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. So 8 of Pentacles. Again, double stability. When we're talking about work and financial stuff. Okay, well, I'll share her thoughts and then I'll share mine. Just so I keep my order kind of intact. So the 8 of Pentacles. Here we go. Itchy nose every time I film these. This is a person who is honing their craft. Agreed. And what else does she say here that I highlighted? This card is about being discerning about your own work and not giving up until you get it right, which I love that. And if we look at this in shadow or reversed, it's about spinning your wheels and expecting it to go somewhere. So doing the same thing, expecting different results. And I agree with that too. I think the 8 of Pentacles, when we're looking at double stability and extra stability, when we're talking about work and we're talking about our goals and the tangible things we're looking for or we're trying to acquire, this is about sort of that place of perfection. And the place of, not perfection, but perfecting. So we're actively trying to perfect our work. We're trying to get better and better at something. And that involves oftentimes this very sort of nitty-gritty, detail-oriented work that is often the least exciting part of the work. It's where things are a little bit more mundane. It's often exciting at the beginning of a project, but when we hit the 8, when we're working on something, when we're working for something, the 8 is where we have to repeat the stuff that's successful so that we can continue to manifest the abundance that we want to manifest. And I think that's really powerful. I think it's also sometimes a difficult place to stick into or to stay in because we want the excitement of the new, and we don't always give this this particular phase or step the attention it really deserves. We don't necessarily always want to stick it through the routine, the repetitive, the perfecting phase, because this is where you really deep dive and get really good at whatever it is you're working on. Okay, so jumping into Marseille. So I'm using the Mythical Creatures Marseille, and so again, I'm going to be using Untold Tarot and sharing Caitlin Matthews' thoughts on these cards. And then after this, I'm going to jump into showing you some card images and then talking through my memoir bits. So here is our 8 of Wands, and numerologically, Caitlin Matthews says that 8s, where's her page? Here we go. 8 is the base, 8s protect what we have and show us how to adapt to what we have achieved. Visits, invitations, and changes create openings. 8s also question the status quo, testing if we are too safe or need to change, finding what we need to reevaluate. In a mutable world, nothing is fixed for life, so 8s can herald change, whether from necessity or personal unease. So 8 of Wands then is work, labor union, social invitation, or working party. your livelihood or main work, analyzing your work prospects. In the reverse, it might be tired, feeling trapped in your job, an infection, malcontent, or a strike. When we're looking at the swords, we have health insurance, health checkup, examining your shortcomings, analyzing your state of mind, or therapy. And in the reverse, disappointment, ongoing trauma, a one-sided relationship, a niggling slight, unspoken words or thoughts that smolder. In the Eight of Cups, home insurance, interesting, which makes sense, double stability and emotion, invitation to the home of a relative, fair play, an ongoing relationship, invitation to invest trust in someone, a protective family member. So, Eight of Coins then, or deniers, depending on your system. Security system, invitation to share resources, safekeeping, incomings and outgoing balance, cash flow situations, budgeting, or counting. And in the reverse, unhealthy environment, unjust settlement, mistakes in your accounts. So it's very practical, the Marseille. So let's take a look at some cards and then I will share my memoir bits. So in my, the decks I'm using for this, by the way, I think I mentioned Mythical Creatures and Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial. So in my deck, I've pulled the Wise Dog Tarot. Look at this leaping doggo going with all of these fast-moving wands, just like going with the momentum. I love that. In the Majestic Earth Tarot, we have the Eight of Trees, movement, messages, imminent, and haste. We almost get this feeling of like a windstorm in this card. In the Eight of Wands in the Playful Heart Tarot, look at these fast-moving critters. I just love that. And then in the Shadowland Tarot, it looks like almost like they're sending out or almost trying to protect themselves from this onslaught of flying brooms. I just love that. That's awesome. So that is the Eight of Wands. Let's take a look now at the Eight of Swords. So again, that feeling of being trapped in the Rider-Waite-Smith. And here we have this pupper who is surrounded by a circle of swords, feeling very stuck. But actually the swords are just in front, so he could easily get away. Eight of Clouds, vulnerable, crisis, abandoned, and exposure. So this is going to be swords, Eight of Swords as well in the Majestic Earth Tarot. We have an overturned ship. It seems like all is lost. Everybody's kind of stuck and immobile, but they need to make some changes and deal with the situation. Eight of Swords in the Playful Heart Tarot. This is so heartbreaking, but it is what it feels like. It's like you feel like you're under all kinds of pressure. It's like, make a decision already, and so you freeze and you can't and you're just stuck. That's what I feel like when I look at that card. And then Eight of Swords in the Shadowland Tarot, they're actually, this character is hemmed in and surrounded by feathers, not swords at all. So really no harm is going to come to them regardless of how they choose to get themselves out of this situation. They could just flop all over. Okay, now let's look at the Eight of Cups. So we have the Wise Dog Tarot here. He's turned his back on all of the 8 cups that are established there. In the Majestic Earth Tarot, look at this Eight of Water. So keywords here are walking away, new course, discontinue, and humility. So beautiful. The Eight of Cups in the Playful Heart Tarot, shining a light for yourself as you walk away from what was pulling you down and back. I really love this image. And Eight of Cups, we have the skeleton here who's left behind all of the preserving fluids. And this really speaks to me. You've got like embalming fluid and stuff down here on these bottles. And it really, and unwrapping the mummified stuff. It's like really shedding. Instead of trying to hold on to something that has long since expired, really, it's allowing things to naturally conclude, to do something new, to move away from clinging to the old. So cool. And then for the Eight of Pentacles, we have the, is this the 8? Yeah, this is the 8. Oh, I see. Oh, this is a dog doing agility training. So he's refining his training. He's leaping over all of these little fences. So cool. The Eight of Stone, productivity, labor, handiwork, and craft in the Majestic Earth Tarot. They're building a building, refining. Excuse me. The Eight of Pentacles in the Playful Heart Tarot. Uh-oh. There's a lot of collaborative energy in refining this project. And I love the sugar skulls in the Shadowland Tarot, Eight of Pentacles. Love that. So those are some cards from my collection. So let me share with you my perspective on these cards. Oh, my nose. And a little tea. So first we have the Eight of Wands. Now, at the time I'm writing this, we're in the midst of a global pandemic. There's a lot going on in the world. It's pretty intense. And so everyday energy, the Eight of Wands to me is a feeling of too much coming at me too quickly. That's usually how I sort of look at this energy day to day. And right now that's news, that's information. And while that may be a little swordsy, it feels to me like there's just so much energy coming at me and so many feelings and stuff that I'm feeling very overwhelmed, and like I don't know how to focus and what I should really be honing in on. And that to me is one of the everyday ways that the Eight of Wands energy can show up. But a more big sort of Eight of Wands moment for me, let me pull up to my thing here. Oh yes, is with YouTube. So one really memorable way that I feel like I'm in this energy is when it comes to creative overwhelm. So YouTube is one of my primary creative outlets, and I have tons and tons of videos that I want to make. I have a huge list, and often I don't know where I should or could focus because I have so much that I want to do that I don't know how to narrow it down. So things like Tarot Memoirs as a series has a tendency to kind of get shifted around, and then I have a hard time getting back to it, and so I get really distracted, and it's kind of that squirrely energy that comes through. So that is one of the ways that is really memorable to me on how Eight of Wands energy shows up for me when it comes to that sort of creative overwhelm. Eight of Swords, analysis paralysis. So in everyday ways, this is when I feel like there's so many opinions and perspectives, either my own or other people's, that I just can't move. I feel super stuck and frozen. So I wrote down, like, if I'm suddenly asked what I want for dinner, it's like, I don't know, Italian, Chinese, sushi, eggs and toast. I don't know, what do you want? I can't make a decision. That's the sort of everyday way that I feel like Eight of Swords energy comes through for me personally. In a bigger way, one of the times I felt the most trapped in my life, and this is pretty big, I was in a relationship. I was surrounded by red flags. The way I was being treated was terrible. And yet, I was so frozen because I felt like any option I could take to get myself out of that situation was going to be bad. It was going to have some sort of negative personal outcome. And no matter which way I looked, it felt like frying pan into the fire, no matter which direction I thought I could go. And so I kind of just stuck and sat with this trapped energy much, much longer than I should have. And I didn't really recognize how to get out of it until I recognized like my own worth. Like I felt so worthless in that relationship that I just didn't know how to even begin to navigate it. And I was so hemmed in. And the moment I recognized my worth was also the moment when I recognized enough and got myself out of that situation. But it felt very restrictive and I felt very trapped while I was in it. And so it's very memorable for this feeling of like not really seeing the forest for the trees because everything just felt like too much. Eight of Cups. Like I said, I have strong feelings about this card because I've had a lot of moments in my life where this was big energy for me. In an everyday way though, to me it's often about choosing myself when I've been choosing other people. In small ways, this is like when I consciously let other people be grown-ups, when I state my needs or my wants and I let other people have whatever reaction they're gonna have without letting that determine whether I should speak up in the first place. And that may feel a little bit interesting for the Eight of Cups, but it's double stability. It's like when I'm in that emotional place where I can recognize, okay, a pattern's emerged now. How do I address that pattern? When I turn away from sort of the status quo and I speak up when a change needs to be made, that's Eight of Cups energy to me. When in a big way, it's like the moment when you realize that everything you've put into a relationship is irrelevant if it's no longer a healthy relationship for you. And so recently, well, I've turned my back on many relationships over the years, and in every circumstance there was a recognition that yes, there's a lot of history here, or there's a lot of time, or there's a lot of effort, or there's a lot of emotional buildup. But at a certain point, there's a recognition that, okay, but it's also an established dynamic, and that dynamic isn't changing or shifting in a way that is healthy. And therefore, the only way to navigate that at a certain point is to recognize, is to let other people be grown-ups and recognize them changing is on them. That's not my job. My job is to go, this isn't working for me. I'm going to extricate myself from that situation. And that is a valid choice. And it can be a very empowering choice, but it can also be a very difficult choice. One of the cards that shows this, and I wish I'd have pulled it today, is from the Everyday Enchantments Tarot by Poppy Palin, and it shows somebody leaving a sink of dirty dishes. And you get this implication of just kind of walking away, like being like, I'm done. Like you hit your done point and it's time. And oftentimes for me, 8 of Cups moments occur long after they should have. A lot of times hindsight is 20/20. It's like, wow, my 8 of Cups moment was actually much sooner. And if I'd have acted then, maybe this would have been easier on everybody. But it often, for me, it takes a while to recognize the rut that's been established. 8 of Pentacles. So to me, this is about refinement and discernment. It's about perfecting the work you've done and doing the less exciting but necessary work, which I've talked about a little bit, that double stability. Refining and perfecting is just what I keep coming back to. So anytime you find yourself doing something that may be or feel a little bit repetitive, the energy of this card is very much about like just sticking with it and sticking with the like maybe a little bit more rote stuff, a little bit less exciting stuff, and really making sure that the finished product is what you want it to be. And in a memorable way, I'm gonna come back to my book because editing is a very nitpicky, refining process. Editing is about working with somebody or doing this on your own and going through and like literally looking for missing periods or commas or slightly restructuring a sentence or adding a semicolon or breaking a long sentence into 2 smaller sentences. And it's very precise. And that is not necessarily fun to me. I did have help, thankfully, and so I just really had to approve or tweak or whatever all the suggestions that were made, but I still found it a little bit like, oh my god, are we done yet? Because oh boy, like the writing is like a creative flow, whereas the editing is very like refine, perfect, discern, pull out the things that aren't needed, add things in for clarity. It's very much this process. So very memorable 8 of Pentacles energy for me. So that is it for the 8s. I don't think I missed anything, no. So I would love to hear your thoughts down below on 8s. How do 8 energies show up in your life? If you feel like sharing, continue the conversation down below because I love to hear other people's perspectives. We did cover quite a lot because we're looking at 4 different suits. So 8 of Wands, 8 of Swords, 8 of Cups, 8 of Pentacles. I would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts. Remember to like, share, subscribe. I will have a link to the full playlist either at the end of this video or up in the cards. Remember to check that out. It started way back. So enjoy that because some of my earlier videos are like cringe, but that's okay. That's okay. It all refines with time, right? That's what they say. And this is the longest series that's been running on my channel. So there's that. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out. Remember, you can always book a reading with me over at supportivetarot.com, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.